Protocol, noun, the established code of procedure or behavior in any group, organization, or situation. Think for a moment about the way your classroom functions. Consider the different components of your day. Students entering the classroom, settling in for a task, submitting work, learning something new, working independently or in groups, closing the day's work, and exiting the classroom. For each of these components to function most effectively and for students to be successful, they must know how to meet your expectations, how to work collaboratively, and the technical skills required. Teaching these students these specific actions or protocols can positively impact the efficiency and productivity of your classroom. It also allows you to be more consistent in enforcing your guidelines. Using technology with students can shift the focus of traditional protocols and change the dynamic of your classroom in very exciting ways.
I'm trying to do the best thing that I can and find ways that I can connect with students. And the fact that I'm using technology is actually just kind of it's just secondary to that. It's because technology is the future of education. It's the future of how we teach. There will always be something new, something kind of around the corner.
The first protocol to teach students is how to enter the classroom and begin working on an entry task.
My entry task is almost always on the smartboard, and I just project that, and it's up when they walk in, and they are theoretically coming in, reading what's on the board, sitting down, and immediately getting on task. We have kids logging into Moodle, and I'll often have a task that they can do right there in Moodle and answer it in Moodle, whether that's a quiz where the questions pop up and they answer the questions, or whether it's a single question that pops up with a window where they can type in their answers and then save their work. And that's kind of helpful because that Moodle allows me to go in and see who did it and how long they took to get it done, because it times them on that. So that's kind of nice. I've also had them open OneNote folders, and I'll project a question on the smartboard, and they will type the question and their answer into OneNote. And OneNote automatically saves it, which then gives them a copy of their answer and their question. So they have that as a study sheet or a study guide or something like that. When the entry task question is one that anticipates what we're going to talk about that day, then when that point in the lesson comes up, I can say, oh, by the way, what did you write in your do now? What did you do as your part of your entry task?
Another protocol that many teachers find useful is evaluating online resources. This is a technology standard that is directly infused into any curricular area. It can also empower the students to be critical thinkers and evaluators, which are lifelong skills.
We do a lot of research-based, student-driven research. We found that kids just weren't getting it, especially for the 8th grade teachers were sort of expressing, by the time they're in 8th grade, it's just not there. So last year I designed about a 2-week program where we would go through, how to understand web addresses, how to use search engines, because it's amazing what kids don't know or sort of misunderstand about search engines and how they work. And then the whole web evaluation piece.
It was a project to help us to decide if it's trustable or not. And we kind of used common sense here about the tree octopus. It's like octopus lives in water, not in trees. And another part was does it look real? Does it look professional? But when I looked on the guy who created this, it was talking about Sasquatches and his arch nemesis, I think it's Madam X or somebody, and we could obviously tell that this was not a real site.
Before I learned this, I didn't know how to evaluate a website correctly, and so I would be getting wrong information from wrong websites.
I have a young man in one of my classes, 7th grader, who's sort of your classic knucklehead. He's a goofball. Very smart kid, very technologically savvy. As a student, he struggles. But what was amazing is, despite his struggles in that technology unit that we taught, it was so refreshing to hear him then go into a research project with his partner and hear him talk about, okay, yeah, we found this information, which is hard to find, but do you really buy that? I mean, look at the author, and hear him say things like, this was written by a 2nd grader, why would you trust this? That to me is refreshing in a world where, the reality is most of these kids, because they lack the skill in really being critical, thinking critically about sources, will believe just about anything they come to on the internet.
The emphasis for this instruction doesn't have to rest on the shoulders of one teacher alone. Work in teams, or as an entire building, or with a school library media specialist to make sure students get these critical skills. At times, students will have technology problems. Understanding how to use the technology appropriately can help the student avoid many of these issues. As a first step, students can restart their computers and check that the wireless is turned on before calling the customer support center to create a ticket. Restarting the computer solves many issues. It is important that the students are an active part of the troubleshooting process.
Any troubleshooting they do will be a big help because students know their laptops and lots of times they know what's wrong with it or they know what's wrong with the program. Or they can actually, lots of times we have students who actually even Google the issue that they're having and they'll come in with the exact problem of what's going on and it makes it easier for us to fix it. They have two ways of submitting a ticket. They call the customer support center at 7030 or they can email the customer support center. And it's really nice to get all the make so that the tech knows exactly what's coming in. If they were to come in without a ticket, nobody would know what to do with them and it would make the process even longer because then we'd have to sit there with the student, put the ticket in, then assess what's going on, where actually that's all done before.
Understanding how to troubleshoot is a life skill that we all, as adults, are using. Knowing the steps that they need to take to fix their problems allows them to kind of build self-confidence in other areas as well. Most kids of mine who are troubleshooting on their own, all they need from me at this point in the year is a verbal okay to get on the phone or go to the swap room. And that's very non-disruptive.
When students begin using technology in more advanced ways, it becomes very helpful for the teacher to allow students to work together and teach each other the tools. It may be the case that the students know more about a specific application than the teacher, and that's okay.
The fear of all teachers is if I don't know it, I don't want to use it. And I think that's the worst approach when it comes to technology, is there are tons of things I don't know, and I walk into it saying, I don't know how to use this. And if I'm comfortable with my teaching, that the kids are able to teach me how to use that. And then what it becomes is I'm using students as leaders in the classroom to teach this program, to show this program. And so my big piece of advice is don't be intimidated by the technology. Technology is a reality of our world, and I think if you're not embracing technology today, you're really not meeting, the needs of the students and the interests of the students. That's part of what I do now, but it's mainly because I've allowed myself to be open to not knowing things and to learn things from the kids.
I've taught a skill set or kind of given students the resources that they need to teach themselves a skill set. And then I have the more experienced students work with the students that haven't had the experience. And I think that's a big part of the leadership component of a class, but that's also a really integral part of the more advanced student being utilized and challenged, because now they're having to describe the fine kind of little accoutrement of what is important.
That's just kind of part of the deal, is you have to be willing to let the kids introduce things, and if you let the kids do that and let the kids take the ownership over that, it really changes that classroom dynamic, and it really makes it from being, teacher directed to student centered and project centered, which is a cool environment.
Creating classroom protocols such as entry tasks, evaluating online resources, troubleshooting, and peer teaching are all parts of the one-to-one environment. These strategies can change the way your classroom functions and help build community among your students as you help them become 21st century learners.